Hello there guys and welcome to your Linux tutorial. In this Linux tutorial we are going to talk about shell globbing, also known as wildcards. So what do wildcards enable us to do? Wildcards enable us to specify a set of file names using a shorthand. Okay, so let me give you a particular example. Let's say that I wanted to output the contents of all of my files that begin with the letter A. Now, what and end with the .txt. So I basically want to output the contents of all the textual files that begin with the letter A. Now, how could I do this? I could type in the ls command and press enter, and then I could manually type in cat aba2.txt, press enter, then aba.txt, press enter, etc. Okay, so I could do all of that. However, there is a better way to do this, and it is to write cat, right, because I want to output the contents of these files, and I could write a star, that is an asterisk, .txt. And now if I press enter, I will actually get the contents from all of these files that start with an A, have 0 or more consecutive characters, and then end with the txt. I will actually get the contents of all of these files outputted. Okay, now how is that possible? Well, basically, this is a wildcard, okay? And the wildcard is actually expanded before the command itself is run. Okay, so what does that mean? What that means is that first this thing gets replaced by a bunch of file names. Okay, so instead of it being like this, like cat a star.txt, it is actually cat aba2.txt, aba.txt, abnew.txt, etc. And then it all gets outputted on the screen. So first this occurs, okay, so first this, what is called expansion, okay, so when the shell actually translates this into actual file names, this is called expansion, all right, and then we get the execution of the cat command. So first this is expanded into a bunch of file names, and then cat acts on that bunch of file names which just got expanded. Okay, so basically what just happens, if we wanted to visualize what just happened, we can use the echo command. That's why I was talking to you about the echo command when we were covering it. That is going to be useful later on. So basically, if you wanted to see what the wildcard is going to get expanded into, we can just copy this wildcard and paste it, press enter, and we see, so these are all the file names that the wildcard gets expanded into. And so it is the same as if we wrote cat and then we wrote all of these files, and then cat outputs the contents of all of these files. Okay, so this command, this write long command right here, is the same command right here. All right, so this is the same, these are the same commands. Okay, so now let's cover these wildcards. These wildcards seem very useful, but before we go deeper into wildcards, let's just repeat what I said, which is wildcards enable us to specify a set of file names using a shorthand. So again, enable us to specify a set of file names using a shorthand. And also, expansion happens before the execution of the command. So first, if we have something like this, an intermediate step is something like this, and then and only then is the command executed. Okay, so now let's look at some special characters which are used in the construction of wildcards. So the first special character, and we already encountered it, is the star character. Okay, so if I type in echo star and press enter, star actually means 0 or more consecutive characters, which actually expanded upon all of the files in our folder. okay? But if I actually just wanted to see all of the files that begin with an A, then I would type in A because I want them to begin with an A, and then 0 or more consecutive characters, I don't care. And now if I press enter, I actually get all of these files, but notice that I get some files which do not end with .txt. Okay, if I wanted some files to end with a .txt, I would just write .txt, and now I would just get the files that begin with an A, have 0 or more consecutive characters, and end with the .txt. Okay, now if I wanted to match exactly one arbitrary character, I could write the question mark. Okay, and basically the question mark is going to match exactly one arbitrary character. Now we will probably going to get, if I press enter, we will probably just get this outputted because we do not have a file name which starts with an A, has exactly one arbitrary character, and then we have a .txt. That file doesn't exist in this folder. So if I press enter, I just get that outputted. But again, if I put 2 question marks, we should match this with ab2 txt, okay, and with aba.txt, because those 2 files actually match this wildcard. And now if I press enter, I actually see that this is the case. Okay, so if you ever get some output like this and you don't understand, like, why isn't it matching? Well, it isn't matching because you actually don't have any file names that match the expression. And actually, to mention this before we go on, this is why I told you when you're using grep to actually use the quotes in your pattern. Because if you actually wanted to match something, let's say that you were using a star or whatever in your grep, and this is a special kind of thing. We are going to talk about these particular things in a later video when you're using grep and when you're trying to match certain things in files. We're going to talk about that in a later video, but this is why you should enclose it in braces. And that's because if you don't enclose it, not in braces, but in quotes, because if you don't enclose it in quotes, what happens is that this expansion, and let me just put just some example, this expansion will occur before grep is executed. So what's going to happen is this is going to get expanded into this, and then you're going to have something like grep this entire thing and then file.txt, which doesn't make any sense. But if you surround the pattern in quotes, that prevents the shell from expanding that. Okay, that's why I told you to put the quotes in. But again, we are going to talk about pattern matching with grep and the entire mechanism behind it very soon. But again, this is why I told you to use quotes to prevent the expansion. Okay, that's why I told you to do so. Okay, then if you wanted to match some characters in a given set, let's say that I wanted to use the previous example, I wanted the second letter to be either B or C. I would write it like this. Okay, so I want the second letter to be either B or C. So the first letter is A, second letter is B or C. Then I have exactly one arbitrary character, and then I have .txt. Press enter, it will actually match the same thing because both of these files have the second letter B. Okay, but if I wanted to specify some range, for example, let's say B to H, I could actually write it like this. So I could write it B dash H, and it's going to match the entire range. If I wanted to match the inverse of this, okay, so if I wanted to match something that doesn't, some letters that actually don't fit into this interval, what I could do is negate the set. Okay, so if I negate the set. So if I negate the set right here and press enter, actually there are no files that match this pattern. And that's exactly because we just negated the set. So we said we want the letter A. We don't want anything from the range from B to H as a second letter. So we don't want anything from the range B to H as the second letter. And obviously none of these files exist in our folder, so we actually didn't match anything. Okay. Also, instead of using this sign, we could use the exclamation mark. It's going to have the same effect. Okay? And now let me just give you a couple of notes. If you want to include a literal dash in the set, so if I wanted to include a literal dash in the set, I should put it first or last. Okay, so if I have some elements, let's say A, B, C, D, E, or let's say A to E, I should put the dash first or I should put the dash last. Okay? Second is to include a literal closing square bracket in the set. So if I wanted to include literally a square bracket, closing square bracket in the set, I should put it first in the set. And to include either the negation symbol, which is this, or the exclamation mark in my set, don't put it first. And again, that's if I wanted to include them literally. Okay, so if I wanted to include them literally, I shouldn't put them first. Okay, so there's a lot of information. Again, a lot of these things, you know, like the special meanings of these things, you can find them on Google. You can Google them and actually kind of see an overview on some website. But I think that it's really important to kind of get an intuitive feeling and to not panic if things like these or things like these happen. Because if you get things like these, it actually just means, okay, shell didn't actually match any of my file names, which means that I probably defined my glob, or sorry, my wildcard differently. Okay, and the important thing to also remember is that expansion, which is just another name for when a shell actually takes that wildcard and expands it into file names, that expansion happens before the command is executed. Okay. And so a lot of information in this tutorial, I admit it's probably been, a lot of information. It's probably going to take some time to sink in. However, I do think you now have a very, very solid understanding of this topic. Okay, so thank you for watching. Don't forget to spread the word about awesome tutorials on this channel, and I will talk to you very soon.